we got a few drops of rain. That was it, and the wind.
And are you guys,
Glad.
are you in one of the dry spots down? I mean,
We
I know
are,
it's drought
yes,
severe.
and we are, and as it's coming across the Missouri River, those fronts always seem to split, and they go to the north and the south of us there in southwest Iowa. It is really dry.
Yeah, we've had that too.
It is really dry.
Are you guys ready? I don't know what kind
We could just chat all
I
day.
was gonna say, I don't know what your schedule is here, but I'm sure we're not the last stop, so. Well, let's go ahead, we'll get started.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just ask you the breaking news here of
Yeah.
Kamala Harris being selected as the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic side. I don't think that comes as a huge surprise, but what's your reaction to that?
Well, it is exciting now that we finally know who the Democratic vice presidential pick is. So again, may the best team win, and we'll just be able to hear from both President Trump and Vice President Pence on the issues, and we'll match them up to the candidates Biden and Harris. And we'll just see what their answers are, what their plans for America are, and we'll go from there.
And maybe even along that same line, I know today both you and Teresa Greenfield released your statements concerning 6 debates. One of them will be here on our air, and we're glad to participate
Yes,
in
thank
that.
you.
What do you hope to have those debates provide to the voters of the state?
Well, I think it's great because my opponent is not out and about doing public events, and so people aren't able to ask her directly, what do you think about this issue? Explain how it is that you have actually taken $700,000 of corporate executive and lobbyist money, but you're claiming you're not. I want her to answer those questions, and so far she's dodging. So I have accepted all 6 debates that we have worked on, but so far Ms. Greenfield has only accepted 3. She has turned down officially, now I understand, 2 of those. One with the Spencer Daily Reporter, which would be a rural forum, which would be wonderful because Iowa is obviously an ag state, a very rural state. And the other one was KGAN and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. She turned them down as well, and that would have been a televised debate. So I'm really disappointed because I think folks need to understand what it is she stands for. You know, does she support rolling back the Second Amendment? Does she support abortion on demand at any stage of a woman's pregnancy? You know, who is funding her campaign? I think she needs to come clear on all of that.
A couple things about your campaign while we're talking about it. One of the other things that she's leveled, she said that you've lost your touch with Iowa, that you're now representing Washington, D.C. and not Iowa. What do you say to that?
I am Iowa first. I am Iowa through and through. Matter of fact, I still live in the same community that I was raised in. I live about 6 miles from that little Iowa farm that I was raised on, and I've never left rural Iowa other than for military obligations. So I think it's really important that everyone understand that I am always fighting for Iowa. My family is all right there in Montgomery and Cass counties and involved in agriculture and industry. And so when I go to the store, when I go to church on Sundays with my mother, I'm looking my neighbors, those farmers, you know, those members of business in the eye, and I'm speaking with them. And so I will never leave Iowa. It is part of who I am and how I was raised. And so I'm back in Iowa every weekend and every opportunity that I have a chance, because this is where I need to be to hear from Iowans.
In your campaign, the commercial that's out right now, and where do I have it here? I wrote it down so I have it right. Yeah, bringing back jobs from China, but the quote in it is fighting to bringing it home.
Right.
What exactly are you doing to bring those jobs home?
Bringing it home. And I actually have legislation that would work on this. But we have Iowans with great ideas. And of course, we want to bring manufacturing back from China. We have Iowans that would love to do that. We need to bring our pharmaceuticals back from China, and we could do that here in Iowa. So the bill I have, of course, it's incentivizing business to come back into the United States. And that's why lowering taxes, working on regulations that aren't overburdensome is really important. And my opponent, she is proposing rolling back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which would force corporations to pay more. And again, which is the reason we drove jobs out of the United States in the first place. So we need industry, we need jobs, and I know Iowans that are ready to fill that gap and make sure that we're providing the resources we need right here in the United States.
Let's talk about the obvious issue here with the coronavirus and the tasks that we're facing on a daily basis as a nation. There has not been a joint acceptance of another round of relief. The president over the weekend stepped in and issued an executive order, which I wanted to ask you about that. It seems that is a bit of a around the end move. I thought the Congress was supposed to really handle the purse strings. Did you have a problem with that?
Well, I know that the president was forced into a corner on this. He knows that Americans are hurting. We still have a lot of unemployed folks that really need the additional benefit. We have a lot of businesses that still need support to remain viable. We have rural healthcare systems that need all of these things that need support. And the president really felt that he was forced into this situation by Congress not coming together. So I've worked extensively, taken suggestions from Iowans, like in the area of child care, in supporting rural healthcare systems, additional unemployment benefits. All of that we have been working on diligently, but the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi in particular, simply walked away from the deal. Chuck Schumer has said time and time again, when we tried as Republicans to extend the $600 per week unemployment insurance benefits, Democrats blocked it on the floor of the Senate. And they said, no, we don't care. You either accept our bill or nothing at all. And so they would rather throw those unemployed folks under the bus than actually come together. They want to play politics with it. We're trying to find the pieces that we can agree on. But they would rather use this as a campaign tool rather than work for the Americans that elected them.
So I just want to clarify, you're okay with the president's move to
I would much rather that we did it as Congress. That's the way it's supposed to happen. But as we look around, we have a pandemic right now, and we have Iowans that are hurting, and they need those benefits. And so the president did, I believe, what he thought was the right thing to do to help all these folks that really need the support. And those are the folks I'm going to continue working on negotiations for. Democrats need to come back to the table so we can actually work through this.
I've read a lot of things about the Democrats have just said, no, we're not going to, it's this or it's nothing. Why is there not more going on? And maybe there is behind the scenes. As lay people out here, we certainly don't understand necessarily the way Washington works. But why not continue to pummel them with offers that eventually you would think, rather than say, well, they're not going to move, so we're not going to move. Why? Is there...
There are a lot of different counteroffers going on and things that we are trying to work on. But initially, when Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer came to the table, they didn't even offer any counteroffers. So if they're not going to budge, and we have various things that we are willing to work with them on. They know that, but they're not willing to give. And so it begs us to wonder if they actually want to do anything for people that are hurting. Their bill spends $3.4 trillion. Over $1 trillion of it is stuff that's not even COVID related. It mentions marijuana more times in the bill than it mentions jobs, which tells me they are not serious about getting this package done.
It seems like there's a lot of room between $1 trillion from the Republicans and $3 trillion from the Democrats. How is there not middle point there? It just seems crazy.
Well, there would be a middle point. That's the point, is there would be a middle point. So they need to give a little bit, get rid of the stuff that is not pandemic related. that goes to help Americans get back on their feet, that goes to help Americans with rent assistance, which goes to help Americans shore up our rural healthcare systems. All of those things are really, really important, but they're not focused on those things. Again, going back to some of the extraneous policy that they've thrown into the bill. And it really, again, it goes back to the question, are they just using this for politics? Do they really care, you know, that we have Iowans suffering here?
The $600 that helped with unemployment obviously was something a lot of people needed and they took advantage of. We've also seen that there are a lot of people that use that as a means of not going back to work. Where do you think that number should be if and when there is another package put out there?
We are negotiating, and what we would like to see is that we get to a level where a person is at somewhere around 70% of what their salary or income was before being laid off. So that would mean that the federal government would come in and help our state unemployment insurance systems, bolster them up and make sure that that income level, it is helpful, but it's not keeping people from returning to work. And we've heard from our employers across the state that really, really are ready to open up. They have all the safety precautions in place. They need to get moving again, but the extra $600 a week was keeping those employees at home.
Let's talk about your Sarah's Law legislation.
Yeah.
I know that's important to you.
It is.
You asked for unanimous consent this week and didn't get it. Were you surprised that happened, or did you think that's what you would be greeted with?
Well, I suspected that's what would happen, but this is an important issue for me, and I know that it's a very important issue for many Iowans, and it certainly is important to Michelle Root and Scott Root, the parents of Sarah Root. So just to refresh everybody, Sarah was killed by an illegal immigrant over 4 years ago, and it was on her college graduation day. She was a 4.0 student, brilliant future ahead of her. And the man that was arrested in her death, he was driving at 3 times the blood alcohol limit. He was drag racing through the city of Omaha, struck Sarah, killed her, and in spite of repeated requests by local law enforcement for ICE to detain the illegal immigrant, he was allowed to bond out. And what do you think happened when he bonded out? He left, and nobody has seen him since. So he needs to be brought to justice, and Sarah's Law would do that. It would require that ICE detain illegal immigrants that have bodily injured or killed someone else.
And the president has enacted some of
He has.
those requirements.
He has.
So, and I get it, but explain why it is important then that it become actual law versus something that's been executively done.
Yes, because there will be administrations in the future that see this as an affront or an insult to illegal aliens, and it's not. It's about obtaining justice for those that have been wronged. And so it potentially, say in the future you would have an administration like a Biden-Harris administration, they could simply undo what President Trump has done in enacting parts of Sarah's Law, and they could allow people like Edwin Mejia to be released on bond, even though he had killed a young American citizen with a bright future, and allow them to disappear back into the shadows, never to be seen again. Michelle Root and Scott Root will never have justice for their daughter, and that's an abomination.
I want to ask you about the Taxpayer Funding of Anarchy Act, something else that you recently introduced, and that's tied into the unrest that we're seeing in some of our communities, the autonomy that some